she entered the Carmelite monastery at Avila and lived a decent but unheroic spiritual life for many years. As Teresa entered her 40s, her spiritual life became more intense and more serious. And she began to receive a series of mystical visitations. She would see Christ, the Blessed Mother, and the saints, not so much with her bodily eyes as with the eyes of her mind and imagination. During these intense experiences, she was sometimes in an ecstatic trance, lying motionless for upwards of a half an hour. Other times she was known during these experiences to levitate. There are even stories told about some of the stronger nuns being called upon to pull her back down to the ground. The most famous of these mystical encounters was what came to be called the transverberation. Teresa described this vividly in her autobiography. She experienced an angel piercing her heart repeatedly with a gold-tipped arrow. It was that scene, of course, that was immortalized in marble by Gian Lorenzo Bernini. But these mystical experiences, as extraordinary as they were, don't really get to the heart of Teresa's spiritual teaching. To understand what she was trying to communicate, I think it's best to look at the title of her most famous work, The Interior Castle. Teresa of Avila found at the very depth of her soul Christ dwelling in her, and she found that to be a castle. Now imagine what that meant for a 16th century Spaniard. A castle was a keep. It was a place of power and safety. To be grounded in Christ, she realized, was to be grounded in that very power, which here and now creates the cosmos. That power which lies beyond the vagaries of space and time. St. John of the Cross referred to this central place, by the way, as the interior wine cellar, the place where the spirits are kept. Teresa of Avila found Christ dwelling within her as a castle, a place of power, a place of peace. Now recall one of Teresa's most famous prayers. Let nothing disturb you. Let nothing trouble you. Everything passes. God alone remains. That's a prayer uttered from the security of the interior castle. It's from this center that one can live a life of detachment and carefree acceptance of God's will. Whether I have a long life or a short life, whether I'm sick or healthy, whether I'm rich or poor, I dwell in the safety of the interior castle. Levitations and visions and locutions and the kind of freaky supernatural elements can turn people off. They can say, well, it just seems like a lot of nonsense. One perspective on that is, I don't care, or who cares if you believe it or not. That's not the essence of the faith. We never get up on Sunday and recite the creed and say, I believe in the levitation of St. Teresa, or I believe in the visions of St. John of the Cross. So our faith does not depend upon these things in some way. On the other hand, there is a scientific reductionism that says the real is simply what I can empirically verify. Well, who said? Our little world that we can measure with our empirical scientific instruments. Go back to Shakespeare's, the great line in Hamlet. There are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamed of in your philosophies, Horatio. It was a mock of that early rationalism that said what science and philosophy can measure and name, that's the real. Come on. God's power stretches way beyond what we can possibly measure. So who's to say God can't do extraordinary things at times to get the attention of the church? So I'd be very impatient with that scientific reductionism, as I would be impatient with a hyper stress on it that says, oh, my whole faith depends on these things. Somewhere beyond those two poles, you find the truth, I think.